In this video I show you my personal top 3 rules to turn a digital photo into an analog vintage photo in a cinematic style. 3 rules for the shooting and 3 rules for the editing. Stay tuned. The shooting. Rule number 1. Backlight. If the main light source is behind your subject, the subject will be much softer than in full light. Either the object becomes a silhouette, which is usually cinematic, or you have enough detail in the shadow and you have an image with high dynamic range. Rule number 2. Depth behind your object. It is much more important to have depth than depth of field. If you place your object directly in front of a wall, it is very difficult to create a cinematic image anyway. That's why sufficient depth is one of the basics for a picture with a cinematic look. Rule number 3. Better underexpose than overexpose. If the shadows are black, they are black. That's okay. However, the highlights should not be white. Then the picture is messed up and looks very digital and amateurish. So expose for the highlights, and if your subject is very dark, you'll either have a nice atmospheric silhouette or you'll have to add a secondary light source to brighten the subject, like here in the Rembrandt look. The editing. Number 1. Diffusion. If you haven't used a diffusion filter such as Black Promised, you can do it afterwards, because to make a photo look less digital and more like an analog image, the sharp edges needed to be softened. I use Dehancer for this, a photo editing program for all common editing software. Rule number 2. Grain. Add grain. If you shoot with Fujifilm cameras like I do, you are luckily enough to add very realistic grain in camera. This is also possible with Dehancer, either preset for 35mm or 16mm or completely manually. Rule number 3. Halation. Last but not least, we add this super atmospheric red bloom effect, which is also known from analog images. If you also want to buy Dehancer, which I really recommend, then feel free to use my discount code. The 10% is on me today. If you liked the video, please subscribe to the channel. Thanks and see you next time.
Subscribe! Subscribe!